Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley. And today we're going to talk about all of the books that I read in July, of which there are 11. I had a really good reading month. I didn't rate anything below a 3-star this month, so we only have 3 to 5-star books, which I recommend every single one of them. If it's a 3-star or higher, I recommend it. Before we get into the specifics of the books, I just want to tell you how appreciative I am that you are here spending this time with me. I love our bonding time, don't you? Our time together is just so wonderful. But I also want to say, if you are so inclined, and if you haven't yet, I would absolutely love it if you would hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I'm going to post all of my other social media doodads over here. I am trying to do TikTok now, so that's a thing. So let's get into the breakdown of the books. Out of the 11 books that I read this month, all of them except one are horror or thriller. There's one sci-fi book. I rated 3 books 3 stars. And when I say 3 stars, it's 3 or 3.5, anything in between. I rated 7 books 4 stars. 4 to 4.5, anything in between. Again, 7. That's good. And I have one stellar 5-star read that I cannot wait to talk to you about. As usual, I'm going to rank these from lowest to highest rated. So we will start with the 3 stars and end with my very favorite book that I read this month, which is absolutely going to be on my favorites of the year list. So hang in if you're interested in finding out about that. You probably already know if you follow me on literally any other social media, because I can't shut up about it. So let's start with the lowest ranking book of this month. And for me, that was Stillhouse Lake by Rachel Caine. This book is the first in a series, which I did know going in, but I think I expected it to be fully wrapped up, even though it was the first in the series because it is a thriller. It does end on kind of a cliffhanger, which was a little bit disappointing. Generally, what this is about, there's this woman, Gina. She's driving home one day with her 2 kids in the back seat, and there's a bunch of police at her house, and she's like,
"What's going on?"
The police start acting really aggressive towards her, and she's like,
"I don't understand what's happening."
Someone accidentally drove into her garage, and it wasn't that somebody drove into her garage like a drunk driver that upset the cops, but what they found in that garage, and it was a body. We come to find that her husband is a serial killer. This is not a spoiler. This is right at the beginning of the book. There is no way that the public believes that she was not involved, that all of this was happening at her home and she didn't know about it. And so she begins getting harassed online. Trolls, stalkers that are doxing her. And so she has to change her identity and start a new life with her kids to protect them. In this new life, she moves to Stillhouse Lake, where these murders start happening again. It's kind of like one of those, did the husband do it or didn't he? Like, what's going on here? The audiobook was fantastic. I thought the pacing was great. I generally enjoyed the story, but it just didn't do for me what it did for a lot of other people. Here's the thing. I have a hard time believing that she has to change her name over and over and over again, that the lives of herself and her children are being threatened by people. She is acquitted of having been involved in this at all. And yet there are people that want to kill her? I don't know, I just have a hard time stretching my disbelief a little bit when it comes to that. I understand that there are people out there who are not in their right mind, right? But I feel like that takes a very special type of person that's going to take it that far, and it would just be easier to remove that threat. You know? I don't know, I feel like there's other ways to handle that. Like, yes, you're gonna be embarrassed, you're gonna be in the news, you're gonna be in the media, but delete all your social media and move somewhere isolated, and you should be okay, right? No, not in this case. Other than that, I felt like the twist was a little bit lackluster and it didn't really fool me. There's a small cast here, so there's not a whole lot of people that it could be that are doing the current killings. So, you know, it just didn't shock me, and maybe that's just because I've read so many thrillers. So I do think this book is going to be for some people. I think this is going to be great for if you are just getting into the thriller genre, especially if you like something with a series. I probably will continue on with this, but it's not going to be a high priority for me. Again, I liked the writing. I loved the audiobook narrator. She did a really great job. And I like the premise of this book. It just wasn't anything crazy for me. So let's move on to my next 3-star book, and that is I Know Who You Are by Alice Feeney. This was the last Alice Feeney book that I could read. I have now read all of her books. And I read this with Jessie over at Reading with Jess, and we did a whole live show discussing it, so I will link that down below if you want to check that out as well to get kind of more in-depth thoughts. There are a non-spoiler and a spoiler section in there as well. I think this is her second book, and I think it's my least favorite of the books that she's written. Although, that being said, it's Alice Feeney. The writing's great. The audiobook's fantastic. It's fast-paced, it sucks you in. I had a little bit of problems with the twist and the sort of plot holes that come along with this. There's not a lot explained. There's some really out there stuff that happens in here. For it to be that extreme and not have the details dissected is slightly disappointing because I want to know why. I want to know why. I need more backstory. This is about a woman, Amy, who is an actor. She's kind of making it, like she's doing all right. One day she comes home and she realizes that her husband just never came home. And so she reports it to the police that he is missing and they begin to suspect her. As you're going through it, you think, is this an unreliable narrator? Is this gaslighting? Amy herself definitely gives me not like other girls. She just can't believe that she's beautiful. She's very shy. She has this kind of traumatic past. This is told in a dual timeline, so we get the past timeline and the current timeline. So we learn about her past as we're going. Yeah, I found it a little bit hard to believe that she was just so shy, just so coy and timid. This definitely at the beginning gives me Gone Girl vibes. This is for sure influenced by Gone Girl, but the twist is really original. So I will say, like, there's some parts of it, like the Gone Girl aspects of it, that felt a little bit trite, but then the twist is so original. Like, I've never seen this twist before. Really interesting, but also like very over the top. Really, really over the top twist. So keep that in mind if you're gonna read this. I do recommend it. I think that it's Alice Feeney, so it's automatically above a lot of other books already. It just takes a lot of suspension of disbelief. And overall, I'm not super mad at it. I just feel like I wish there was a little bit more explained in order to get to where it got to. All right, the next book is gonna be a 3.5 star, and that is Creep by Jennifer Hillier. I believe this was her debut, and it is the first in a duology. Again, this is probably the least favorite of mine that I've read from Jennifer Hillier, but again, amazing author, love Jennifer Hillier. I do not recommend the audio for this one. Unfortunately, the audio narrator I didn't love. The accents. I'm from Texas, okay? Well, I've been here over a decade. There's a character in this book that's very Texan, and the audio narrator, it was a lot. This is about a woman, Dr. Sheila Tao, who is a professor of psychology at a university. She studies human behavior, and she has an affair with one of her students. Meanwhile, she is engaged to be married to this big old Texan guy who used to be a football player. He's not like super smart, but he really loves her. So when she gets engaged, she decides she's gonna end her affair with the student. His name's Ethan. Ethan's not having it. Ethan does not want to be just thrown away like a piece of garbage. Ethan decides he's gonna do something about it. He starts blackmailing her. The story unravels from there. I will say the first half of this was a little bit seemingly, not cliche, but just nothing like crazy special. But once I got to the second half of it, I was like, okay, I see what you did there. And I felt like the pacing really picked up in the second half. The twist started coming in, and I did enjoy the plot. I would like to see this one as a movie or a TV show. I think some of the tactics that are employed in here would be more believable if I could see it with my own eyes. And if you've read this book, you probably know what I'm talking about. There is a deception that is done that I would like to see implemented in real life. I just think it would make for good TV if it could be pulled off visually. Let's just say that. Definitely gonna be reading the second book in this, interested to see where it goes. I would recommend it. I think Jennifer Hillier is a really great writer. Okay, now we're gonna move on to my 4-star reads this month. The first one I wanna talk about is And There He Kept Her by Joshua Moling. This was a recommendation from Beth at Beth's All Booked. This was a fun, dark time. I read this, or listened to it rather, in one day. So it was just super quick. It's an interesting story because it's not super twisty. It's not one of those that is like, bam, 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 like an Alice Feeney. But you get into the mind of a killer. And so that's what piqued my interest for this one. At the very beginning of a book, these two teenagers sneak into this house. They're trying to rob the house. They think the man who owns this house is just this little old man. Lo and behold, he is not. He is in fact a killer. And so when these two kids disappear, we follow an acting sheriff Packard, I think was his name, to try to figure out the case. We also follow the parents of the kids, or at least one of them. And we kind of delve deeper into who this old man is, who these kids are, when we get to know the people in the town, etc. This is set in a small town in Minnesota. As we're following Sheriff Packard, we are realizing that he is escaping a dark past of his own. I really loved him as a character. He is kind of a cinnamon roll. The more you get to know him, the more you just like heart him. There were some descriptions in here that I was a little bit like, when they are talking about this killer. The only thing that gave me pause were some of these descriptions of his fatness, how that affects his mobility and things like that. Very functional descriptions, nothing like bullying or fat shaming per se. But the way it's described is definitely meant to make you feel a sense of disgust towards this man. That blurred line was a little sketchy for me at times. As far as my own triggers, I think that connection there, the bad guy being fat, is maybe not helpful for other fat people. But that being said, I was hooked from that first scene. I had to know what happened. I had to know who these people were. I had to know the past of this killer and how he got to the place he was in now. I thought it was a fun ride. So I would definitely recommend it 4 stars. All right, the next 4-star book I have this month is The Good Lie by A.R. Torre. Was pleasantly surprised by this after rating the last book that I read from her 2 stars. What was it? Every Last Secret, I think it's called. Did not like that one. And so this one was definitely a pleasant surprise. I think I really enjoyed this one because our main character is a psychiatrist who specializes in killers. There is a serial killer that's been killing young men or boys, teenage boys, and doing some really messed up stuff to them. He has been hearkened as the Bloody Heart Killer. The ways that he is killing these young men is very disturbing. Gwen has a lot of conflict with her clients because she wants them to feel safe, that they can talk to her and they can tell her their secrets. But she also, has an obligation that if she feels like someone else is in danger, she has to report it to the police. There is one instance that happens with one of her clients where she's kind of in a gray area where she feels like maybe I should have reported something. But if I, jump straight to that in every case, like, she has to use her judgment very wisely, especially because she's working with killers. Why am I talking with my hands so much? And then we are also following defense attorney Robert, who is the father of one of the boys who was killed by the Bloody Heart Killer. We are trying to figure out who is the Bloody Heart Killer. Gwen thinks that Robert is hiding something, and yet at the same time, she has this very strong attraction to him. I thought this one was really well written. I had a good time with it. I could tell that these were the same author that wrote these 2 books, but at the same time, I thought with this one, it was just done in a way that made more sense, that was more believable, while also being shocking, while also being just really interesting for me as a reader and for my specific things that I tend to enjoy. So I would definitely recommend this one. I had a really good time with it. 4 stars. Okay, the next 2 books that I want to talk about are both 4 stars and both by the same author, and that is Paul Tremblay. I am building this slow appreciation of Paul Tremblay's work. Both of these books I still don't feel like I fully understand, but both of these books I have a lot of respect for and I think are really well done. I think he's a smart writer. So the first one I want to talk about is Head Full of Ghosts. This is a possession story, and we're following the Barrett family. They have an 8-year-old daughter, Mary, and a 14-year-old daughter, Marjorie. Marjorie is sick. She's acting really strangely. Daddy Barrett is quite religious, and he is sure she is possessed. Mommy Barrett, on the other hand, is not religious at all, and she thinks she is having some kind of mental health issue. Maybe she's schizophrenic, maybe, who knows. They're running low on cash, though, and so they agree to let this film crew come in and film this possession story. And it's kind of like this reality show, I guess. I'm not really sure. There's confessionals, there's reenactments. I'm not really, I haven't wrapped my head around how this went. This is one where I think it would have been really helpful to have the physical book for both of these, as a matter of fact. This all happened 15 years ago. And so we also have a dual timeline where we're now hearing from Mary 15 years later. This was the 8-year-old sister. And she is telling her side of the story to a writer who's going to write a book about it. And she's kind of giving the in-depth, behind the scenes kind of expose on what actually happened in this house. Meanwhile, and my favorite part of the story, we are following a blogger or podcaster. I think it's a blogger named Karen or Rachel. One of them's the writer, one of them's the blogger. What I loved about this audiobook, because I think it is a blog, but this audiobook really made it seem like a podcast, and I just loved that. You know, I love a podcast element in my books. The audio is just amazing. It is incredible audio. And so this podcaster slash vlogger is giving their opinion on how they think. They're kind of breaking down the scenes of the TV show that played out all these years ago. They're going through every scene and saying,
well, this is what it looks like, and they cut to this scene. You can tell that maybe the producers had something to do with this. That could be a trick of the light,
etc. Things like that. And so they're kind of just trying to unravel it from an outsider perspective and from a kind of documentary-esque place. What I love about Paul Tremblay's writing is that he, especially in these two books, brings in a lot of background information, things that this book was clearly inspired by, other works of horror, books, movies, just things in the culture and the genre that are prevalent. He brings it up in a way that's like, okay, he's using this kind of blogger to say, this story is being pulled from all of these other references. This is not original, yada, yada, yada. But he's saying that about himself, about his own writing. And so it's kind of meta in a sense. So there's a lot of fun kind of nostalgia moments in there. If you've read Cabin at the End of the World and you know how that one ends, do not expect anything like super wrapped up and tied up in a bow from either of these two books. He leaves it at a point where it's like, okay, it could be argued either way. And I think both of these would be exceptional book club picks for that reason. Was it mental health related? Was it possession? And I guess depending on your beliefs, are they even different? I don't know. It's just something to think about. He really is thought-provoking. And so let's move on to the Pallbearers Club. This is his newest release that came out this month, I believe. It's similar in a lot of ways, but also different. The coolest part about this one is the way it's written. And again, I feel like if you have the physical book, you might get a little bit more out of it because we're following Art Barbara, who grew up in the 80s and is writing kind of this like memoir about this club that he started called the Pallbearers Club. He's trying to get far away from his home and from his family when he goes to college. And so he decides to start this extracurricular club to kind of make it look good on his college applications. Essentially, they are volunteer pallbearers for poorly attended funerals. When this kind of mysterious girl, I guess, joins his club, he is really fascinated by her, and she ends up completely changing the trajectory of his life. The book is written as his memoir. You are reading his memoir. As you are reading the memoir, so is Mercy. She is annotating in the margins, and the way it's written, there are actual annotations in the margins, which I didn't know because I listened to the audio, but I have confirmation from other people. And so that's the reason I think this book would be really cool to just read physically. Because how fun is it to have a book where there's actual annotations in the margin by the author that's built in as part of the story? I just think it's a really, really cool concept. Mercy is not your typical teenager. He never even knows how old she is. Is she a teenager? Is she a girl? Is she a woman at the time? Who knows? But essentially, she does not remember the story the same way that Art remembers it. And so as she's writing her annotations in there, you don't know, as a reader, who to believe. Art's life did not go as he planned. A lot went wrong. He's kind of trying to unravel what's going on with his life. He thinks all of the bad things that happened to him were a direct result of this supernatural force that Mercy brought to the table. I don't want to tell you what kind of supernatural force this is because I'm not sure if that is a spoiler, but for the entire book, you are wondering who is telling the truth, who is not, but also, is this supernatural or is it not? Does Art just have bad luck? Or is Mercy not human? And the way it ends, oh my gosh, the way it ends, it just really makes you think. Again, like I love his endings. I love how he makes you think about things. I just thought it was a really fun, good time, and I would definitely recommend this one. Paul Tremblay is becoming an auto-buy author for me, and it's weird because it's like this slow growing appreciation of his work. It's not something that I finish his books and I'm like screaming from the hilltops, but also I'm like,
okay, Paul. Okay.
I see you, I appreciate you, I respect your brain, I respect your aesthetic, and I think his books are well done. All right, my next 4-star book is Upgrade by Blake Crouch. This is going to be the only sci-fi book on this list. This one I'm giving 4 stars as well. This is not a super original premise. We're following Logan Ramsey. Logan's family history is not great. His mom was a scientist and she was responsible for the deaths of a lot of people in her kind of science experimentation with the genome and things of that nature, with the human genome.
I could be phrasing this wrong. I don't know.
Logan works for like this kind of police authority thing where they are in charge of making sure our DNA is safe. Am I explaining this right? I don't even know if I can't remember the details. It's a lot. But essentially, he has an incident one day and then he starts to feel like he is thinking a little faster, like his memory is improving. He suddenly realizes he can recall every moment of his past in perfect photorealistic detail. He's having these weird growing pains and he realized that his DNA has been hacked. We start to realize that this has happened for a reason, the purpose of which could affect the entire world. Yeah, this idea is not super original. You see this in like Limitless and Lucy. It's happened before, although I think where he took it made it more original. I don't think this is as good as his other 2 books that I've read and loved, Recursion and Dark Matter. I think both of those were just more original in general, but the way he does his world building I think is excellent. It definitely gives you like this emotional connection to him. It has this kind of family ties element. I just realized I have this book and I should be holding it up. I felt like this was a fun, fast-paced science fiction thriller. I don't think it's his most original work. I don't think it is mind-blowing by any means, but I had a really good time with it and I was just in it for the ride. And I definitely recommend it if you're into science fiction. Next in my 4-star books, I have Brother by Anya Alborn. This is my first Anya Alborn book to read. I read this for Summerween. It's an interesting book. So this is about a family of cannibals and we're following Michael, who's one of the brothers. He is the youngest brother, in fact, and he's never quite fit in with his family. They track down women, they hunt them down and kill them and eat them. He is desperate to fit in and desperate to feel appreciated. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed, you know, but he is so human. Like, his character is written really well. A lot of this revolves around his relationship with his brother Reb. This is not like other books that I've read that involve cannibalism. It is definitely more muted, more understated. I would say if you're getting into horror and you're really not into like a whole lot of body horror, this would be a really great place to start. The disturbing part of this, it really has to do with the morality of the choices involved and less to do with the gruesome details, but it's very disturbing. A little bit of a slower paced story. We're spending a lot of time getting to know these characters, getting to know their dynamic with each other and how they kind of fit into this group. And the first half is a lot of that, but then the second half, it starts to pick up and the ending. Another one, I just really loved the ending. And it's tragic. It's not a happy ending. Don't get me wrong. It's tragic. You realize that the plot points are just woven in just right. It's effective and heart-wrenching at the same time. So yeah, just a really interesting read and different from other books like it that I've read before, which I have enjoyed for different reasons. Like, they don't talk explicitly about the cannibalism, but you know what's happening. It's like this like fog on the outer edges of the story that just kind of encapsulates it and keeps it in this little bubble where they're talking around a lot of what's happening instead of giving you that detail. But it's that feeling from that fog that gives it that kind of eerie quality. I definitely recommend this one. 4 stars. Check it out if you're interested at all. I think get past the first half, and the first half's not bad. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but it's just a little bit kind of a slower kind of getting to know me, you know, deal as far as Michael is concerned. It really is successful in making you feel connected to him. I feel like the characters felt real, and it's well written. I'll definitely read another book from Anya Alborn. If you have any suggestions on which one of hers I should pick up next, let me know down below in the comments. The next book I want to talk about is a 4.5 star, just almost perfect. I really loved it, and that is Still Missing by Chevy Stevens. This was my first Chevy Stevens, and I read it in one day. The audiobook was fantastic. We're following Amy, who is a realtor, and she is at this open house when the book opens, and she's trying to sell this house. Kind of a slow day. She really wants to get back home to her boyfriend, who's just like this super patient, loving guy. She just had an argument with her mom. Her mom is just like a piece of work. It's looking slow. She's about to close it down when this guy shows up, and she's like, okay, he seems really interested. This could be my lucky day. And
he abducts her.
this is set on Vancouver Island, which I'm really intrigued by right now because I just started watching Alone, which is a lot of the seasons are set on Vancouver Island. So I'm like, I know exactly the terrain and what it looks like. It's very isolated, very forested. The way the book is told is one of the coolest things about it, and that is through her sessions after the fact with her psychiatrist. So every single chapter is a different session with her psychiatrist. If I remember correctly, it's in second person, like she's talking to the psychiatrist, like you are the psychiatrist. So the story is unraveling. She obviously survives this abduction, but was with him for a full year, and the story doesn't end there. Afterwards, the implications of her abductions continue to haunt her, and so we follow her as the story begins to take a different shape. So this is not your typical abduction story because we get to see what happens after. There was never a gasp moment for me as far as like the twists go, but there was a twist that got me. The story was both dark and suspenseful while also being really insightful and harrowing. The last line of this book absolutely broke me. I think I cried. I think I shed a tear. Cannot wait to read more from Chevy Stevens. Again, if you have recommendations of her books, put them down there. For the pièce de la résistance. No. What's wrong with me? The moment you have been waiting for. The book that I am obsessed with and that I am trying to get literally everyone I know to read. I listened to this book on SCRIBD. I had a library copy. I then went and purchased my own copy, and that is Any Man by Amber Tamblyn. Wow. Just wow. This book is so freaking good. I also read this for Summerween. I will link my vlog down below if you're interested in watching me actually like go through reading it and like my emotions as I was reading it, because it was pretty intense. One of the most original books I have read in a while, and just a gem. I don't hardly ever find absolute 5-star, no questions asked gems that I have not heard a whole bunch of people talking about, and this is it. Amber Tamblyn. She's an actor. First of all, she was in The Ring. She was in Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Had no idea she was an author. She is. She wrote this book in 2018. This is a sort of literary story about a female predator who sexually assaults men. But we're following the victims of this. We're not following the predator. And here's one thing. Okay, so I watched Ashley's video today from Ashley's Little Library of her disturbing books. Go check out that video of hers. It was really, really good. She read and reviewed this book. She did a really awesome job of explaining it and kind of giving you an idea of what to expect for this, which is something that I don't know that I fully have done the best job at, but I do want to say this is not a good for her book. I think what is so effective about this for me is that it's not, because what it's doing is turning the tables. It's making us view how we view victims of sexual assault, which is typically female victims. Not to say that men are never victimized, they are. But I also think men are less likely to talk about it, to come out about it. And it's just more common for a female to be sexually assaulted. Let's be real. The way we treat women who have been sexually assaulted is disgusting. The way we victim blame, the way we say,
Oh, well, maybe you shouldn't have been wearing that.
or,
Oh, well, maybe you shouldn't have been drinking.
I feel like it is so effective when the tables are turned and we get to hear those same things said to men. It really becomes clear how disgusting and how derogatory and how unfair our culture treats victims of sexual assault. And that is the punch of this book. That's the point. That's what it does. It makes you aware. By flipping the script, by turning the tables, it really just makes it so obvious where we're going wrong. You know what I'm saying? And the way this book is told, I mean, it's the most beautifully written book. It has so much mixed media. You have web searches, tweets, there's like a radio talk show, there's another like transcript of a women's talk show where they're just saying disgusting things about these men. And then of course we're getting the stories from the men of how they're affected by this, how they feel when they have to be subjected to a rape kit, when they have to deal with how the media is talking about them, when they are being belittled by other men for letting someone do this to them. These horrific things that this woman has done. The prose. Ashley said it perfectly when she said it's like this really fine line, this kind of like mixture between poetry and prose, because it's not told in a straightforward narrative. It's told in little vignettes. Ashley did such a great job of explaining that, which I didn't think to do, but yes, it's like little vignettes. I also want to stress that this audiobook is amazing. The audiobook is so incredible. Amber Tamblyn plays the villain, and it has a full cast, and I just fully like encourage you to listen to the audio. They do use the R word in here. There are several trigger warnings. Look it up. It's not super grotesque detail, but it is at the same time. Like I've seen worse, but also there's some messed up stuff happening in here. So just go in prepared for that. It's a really quick read. It's super short. It's like 200 pages. It's 265 pages, but a lot of the pages are just like these pages, just like a couple words, you know? So super, super, super fast read. I think I said everything I wanted to say about it. I don't know. I'm doubting how well I'm selling this to you guys, but I think you should read it. I think it's amazing. I gave it 5 stars. And that's it. That's my wrap up. That is July. Super excited for August. I feel like July was just like, like I read 11 books. That's like my perfect kind of amount of books to read. Really enjoyed most of them. I had a good time, and I've got some bangers coming next month that I'm really excited for. So I hope you stick around. I hope you all are having an amazing, wonderful day. And I want to remind you not to forget that life is short, so read Riley. Cheers and goodbye.